The blizzard struck Hillsboro, New Mexico on December 23, 1879, turning the desert town into a frozen wasteland that nobody had anticipated. And when Xavier Lawson heard the frantic knocking on his stable door that night, he had no idea that opening it would change his entire life. He pulled the heavy wooden door against the howling wind, snow whipping into his face as he squinted into the white chaos. A figure collapsed at his feet, wrapped in what might have once been a decent traveling cloak but was now crusted with ice and torn at the edges. Xavier dropped to his knees, his large hands turning the person over carefully. A woman. Young, her lips blue with cold, her dark hair matted with snow and ice. She was barely conscious, her eyelids fluttering as she tried to focus on his face. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Help me." Xavier did not hesitate. He lifted her into his arms, surprised at how light she was, how fragile she felt against his chest. He kicked the stable door shut behind them and carried her toward the small house attached to the barn where he lived alone. The wind screamed outside like a living thing, rattling the windows and finding every crack in the walls. He had been preparing for a long, cold night by himself, but now he had a stranger in his arms who might not survive until morning if he did not act quickly. Inside his modest home, the fireplace crackled with the logs he had just added. Xavier laid the woman on the braided rug in front of the hearth, then rushed to grab every blanket he owned. Her clothes were soaked through, and he knew that leaving her in them would be dangerous. He turned his back, giving her what privacy he could while he pulled off her frozen boots and outer layers, replacing them with dry blankets. Her teeth chattered violently, and her whole body shook with tremors that worried him deeply. "Can you hear me?" he asked, kneeling beside her. "I need you to stay awake. Tell me your name." Her eyes opened slightly, revealing irises the color of honey. "Lily," she managed. "Lily Barrett." "Lily," he repeated, tucking the blankets more securely around her. "I am Xavier. You are safe now. What happened to you?" She tried to speak, but another violent shiver overtook her. Xavier made a quick decision and went to his small kitchen area, heating water in a kettle over his stove. He added herbs his mother had taught him about years ago before she passed, ones that helped warm the body from within. While the tea steeped, he pulled his own chair closer to the fire and carefully lifted Lily into it, wrapping her in even more blankets until she resembled a cocoon. "Drink this," he said gently, holding the cup to her lips. "Small sips." Lily obeyed, and he watched as color slowly began to return to her cheeks. The shaking lessened gradually. Outside, the storm continued its assault on the little house, but inside, warmth was winning the battle. Xavier sat on the floor beside her chair, watching her carefully for any signs that her condition was worsening. "The stagecoach," Lily finally said, her voice stronger now. "It overturned about 2 miles from town. The driver told us to run for shelter while he went for help with the other passengers. I got separated in the storm. I could not see anything. I just kept walking and hoping I would find something before I froze to death." Xavier felt anger rise in his chest. "The driver left you alone in a blizzard." "He did not know I had fallen behind," Lily said quickly. "It is not his fault. The storm came so fast and everything was confusion. One moment we were traveling under clear skies and the next we could barely see our hands in front of our faces." "This weather is unnatural for New Mexico," Xavier said, shaking his head. "In all my 30 years, I have never seen a storm like this hit Hillsboro. The desert does not do this." Lily closed her eyes, exhaustion evident in every line of her face. "I thought I was going to die out there. I prayed for help, for any sign of shelter. Then I saw the outline of your stable through the snow." "You were lucky," Xavier said. "Another hour out there and you would not have made it." "I know," she whispered. I am sorry to be such a burden. You must think me foolish for getting separated from the others." Xavier looked up at her, surprised by her words. Even now, barely recovered from near death, she was apologizing to him. He reached out and gently touched her hand where it clutched the blanket. "You are not a burden, Lily Barrett. You are a person who needed help, and I am glad I was here to give it." She opened her eyes and met his gaze. Something passed between them in that moment, something Xavier could not quite name but felt deep in his chest. Her eyes held gratitude, yes, but also intelligence and a kind of quiet strength that intrigued him. The night wore on, and Xavier stayed vigilant. He made Lily more tea, then heated soup from the pot he had made earlier for his own dinner. She protested that she was taking his food, but he insisted, and eventually she ate, color returning more fully to her face with each spoonful. They talked little at first, both listening to the storm rage outside, but as the hours passed and Lily grew stronger, Xavier found himself curious about this woman who had literally fallen into his life. "Where were you headed?" he asked, feeding another log into the fire. "Santa Fe," Lily replied. "I was traveling from Texas. My father passed away 3 months ago, and I have been settling his affairs. I have a teaching position waiting for me in Santa Fe, a school for young ladies." "A teacher," Xavier said, impressed. "That is noble work." Lily smiled slightly. "It is necessary work. Too many girls grow up without education, without opportunities. I want to change that, even if it is just for a few." Xavier nodded, thinking of his own limited schooling. He had learned to read and write from his mother, but formal education had been a luxury his family could not afford. He had worked with horses since he was a boy, and now, at 30, he owned this small stable and made a modest living training horses and offering boarding to travelers passing through Hillsboro. "What about you?" Lily asked. "Have you always lived here?" "Born and raised," Xavier said. "My father died when I was young and my mother passed 5 years ago. This was their place. I have kept it running." "You live alone?" The question was innocent, but Xavier saw something in her eyes that made him wonder what she was really asking. "I do," he confirmed. "Never found a woman willing to take on a simple horse trainer with dirt under his fingernails and hay in his hair." Lily laughed, a sound that surprised them both. It was warm and genuine, and it made Xavier smile despite himself. "I think you are being too modest," she said. "You saved my life tonight. That is not the action of a simple anything." Xavier felt heat rise to his face that had nothing to do with the fire. "I did what anyone would do." "Perhaps," Lily said softly, "but you did it with kindness and without hesitation. That speaks to character." They fell into comfortable silence after that, and eventually, Xavier convinced Lily to take his bed while he slept in the chair by the fire. She protested vigorously, but he insisted, and she was still too weak to put up much of a fight. He listened to her settle in the next room, then sat in his chair, staring into the flames and wondering what tomorrow would bring. The storm blew itself out by dawn, leaving Hillsboro buried under 2 feet of snow that gleamed impossibly white in the morning sun. Xavier woke stiff from sleeping in the chair, but his first thought was of Lily. He checked on her and found her still sleeping, her breathing deep and even. Satisfied that she was recovering, he went outside to assess the damage. The snow had drifted against his stable, and he spent the morning digging out the doors and checking on the 3 horses in his care. They were fine, if a bit restless from the unusual weather. The town beyond looked like something from a fairy tale, all the familiar adobe buildings transformed by their white blankets. Smoke rose from chimneys as families woke and dealt with the aftermath of the unexpected storm. Xavier was carrying water to the horses when he heard voices calling from the direction of town. 3 men were making their way toward his property, struggling through the deep snow. As they got closer, Xavier recognized Sheriff Tom Harrison, Doc Miller, and Jack Crawford, who owned the saloon. "Xavier," the sheriff called, "you make it through the night all right." "I am fine," Xavier called back, "but I have someone here who needs attention. A woman from the stage coach that overturned." Doc Miller, a thin man in his 50s with wire spectacles, perked up immediately. "She is alive. The driver made it to town last night and said there were 2 women on board. He thought they had both found shelter together, but he could not find them in the storm. We found the other woman at the church this morning, but nobody knew where the second one had gone." "She is here," Xavier said, leading them toward his house. "She nearly froze to death, but I got her warm. She was sleeping when I came out." Inside, they found Lily awake, sitting up in Xavier's bed with blankets wrapped around her shoulders. She looked embarrassed to be seen in such a state by strangers, but Doc Miller was all business, asking her questions and checking her hands and feet for frostbite. Xavier stood back, watching as the doctor worked, feeling strangely protective of this woman he had known for less than 12 hours. "You are very lucky," Doc Miller announced finally. "No permanent damage that I can see. You will need to rest for a few days and keep warm, but you should make a full recovery." "I need to get to Santa Fe," Lily said. "I am expected at the school." "The roads will not be passable for at least a week," Sheriff Harrison said, shaking his head. "Maybe longer. This snow is going to take time to melt, and we do not have the equipment to clear the main routes quickly. You will have to wait it out here in Hillsboro." Lily looked distressed. "But I have nowhere to stay. The stage coach was to take me straight through." "The boarding house has room," Jack Crawford offered. "Mrs. Henderson will take good care of you." Xavier found himself speaking before he could think better of it. "She can stay here. I have the space, and she is already settled." Everyone turned to look at him. The sheriff raised an eyebrow and Doc Miller looked concerned. Xavier knew what they were thinking. A single man and a single woman living under the same roof, even temporarily, would set tongues wagging in a town the size of Hillsboro. "I do not think that is appropriate," Lily said quietly, though Xavier thought he saw disappointment in her eyes. "I will sleep in the stable," Xavier said firmly. "It is warm enough with the horses, and I have done it before on cold nights when I was worried about them. Lily needs to stay where it is warmest while she recovers. Moving her to the boarding house in this snow and cold seems foolish when she is already here and safe." Doc Miller considered this. He has a point. Moving her could risk relapse, and Xavier is right about the stable. He has a good setup in there. The sheriff still looked dubious, but finally nodded. "All right, but I am going to tell Mrs. Henderson the situation so she can check in on Miss Barrett here. We do not want any impropriety." "There will be none," Xavier said firmly, meeting the sheriff's gaze. "I give you my word." After the men left, Xavier found Lily looking at him with an expression he could not quite read. "You did not have to do that," she said. "I could have gone to the boarding house." "You heard Doc Miller," Xavier said. "You need to stay warm and rest. Besides, I do not mind sleeping in the stable. The horses are good company." "Still," Lily said, "it is a sacrifice. I am already so far in your debt." Xavier moved closer, pulling up the chair he had slept in. "Lily, last night when you apologized for being a burden, I told you that you were not. I meant that. Having you here, knowing that you are safe and recovering, that does not feel like a burden to me. It feels like the right thing, maybe the only right thing in a long while." She studied his face, her honey-colored eyes searching for something. "Why are you so kind to me? You do not even know me." "Maybe I would like to," Xavier said honestly, "if you do not mind the company of a horse trainer while you are stuck in Hillsboro." A smile played at the corners of Lily's mouth. "I think I would like that very much." The days that followed fell into an unexpected rhythm. Xavier slept in the stable as promised, though he spent his days in the house with Lily, sharing meals and conversation. Mrs. Henderson from the boarding house did indeed check in daily, her sharp eyes missing nothing, but even she could find no fault with the arrangement. Xavier was always respectful, and Lily was clearly recovering well under his care. They talked about everything. Lily told him about growing up in Texas, about her father who had been a shopkeeper and her mother who had died when Lily was young. She talked about her passion for teaching, about the girls she hoped to reach and inspire. Xavier found himself opening up in ways he rarely did with anyone, telling her about his dreams for the stable, about the wild horses he sometimes saw in the hills and wished he could train, about the loneliness that had become such a constant companion he barely noticed it anymore. "You should not be alone," Lily said one afternoon as they sat by the fire, her wrapped in blankets and him whittling a small wooden horse he was making for the preacher's daughter. "You have too much kindness in you to waste it on solitude." "I have not had much choice," Xavier admitted. "Most women in Hillsboro are already married or looking for someone with more prospects than a stable hand." "You are not a stable hand," Lily corrected. "You are a business owner. You have your own land and your own skills. Any woman would be lucky to have you." Xavier looked up from his whittling, meeting her eyes. "Any woman?" Lily held his gaze for a long moment, something electric passing between them. Then she looked away, color rising in her cheeks. "I think so, yes." On the fourth day of her stay, Lily was strong enough to move around the house freely. She insisted on helping Xavier with tasks, and they cooked dinner together, moving around the small kitchen with an ease that felt natural, as if they had been doing this for years instead of days. Xavier found himself hyper-aware of every accidental brush of their hands, every moment when they stood close together. That evening, after they had eaten and cleaned up, Lily stood at the window looking out at the snow that still blanketed everything in sight. "It is beautiful," she said softly. "In Texas, we almost never see snow, certainly never like this." Xavier came to stand beside her. "I never thought I would find anything good about this storm, but it brought you here. That seems like something worth appreciating." Lily turned to him, and in the lamplight, Xavier thought he had never seen anyone more beautiful. Her dark hair fell loose around her shoulders, and her eyes held a warmth that made his chest tight. "Xavier," she said quietly, "what happens when the snow melts?" It was the question that had been hanging between them, unspoken but always present. Xavier knew what she was asking. She had a job waiting in Santa Fe, a life planned out. He had his stable here in Hillsboro. In a few days, maybe a week at most, the roads would be clear enough for travel and she would leave. "I do not know," he said honestly. "What do you want to happen?" Lily bit her lip, clearly wrestling with something. "I feel like I should not say. It is too soon, too impossible. We have known each other such a short time." "Sometimes that does not matter," Xavier said. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently took her hand. "I know it is crazy. I know I should not feel this way so quickly. But Lily, having you here these past few days, it has been the best time I can remember in years. The house feels alive again. I feel alive again." "I feel it too," Lily whispered. "But Xavier, I have obligations. The school is expecting me. I signed a contract." "I know," Xavier said. "I would never ask you to give up your dreams." "What if my dreams are changing?" Lily asked, her voice barely audible. "What if I am starting to want something different than what I planned?" Xavier's heart hammered in his chest. "What are you saying?" Lily stepped closer, looking up at him. "I am saying that when I think about leaving here, about leaving you, it feels wrong. It feels like I would be walking away from something important, something rare." Xavier cupped her face gently with his free hand, his thumb brushing her cheek. "You barely know me." "I know enough," Lily said firmly. "I know you are kind and honest. I know you work hard and you treat your animals with respect. I know you pulled a stranger out of a blizzard and gave her everything she needed without asking for anything in return. I know that when you look at me, I feel seen in a way I never have before." "Lily," Xavier breathed, and then he was kissing her, unable to stop himself any longer. She melted into him, her arms going around his neck as his wrapped around her waist. The kiss was gentle at first, then deeper, full of all the longing and connection that had been building between them. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Xavier rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he whispered. "Do not go to Santa Fe. Stay here with me." "I want to," Lily said, her voice shaking. "Xavier, you have no idea how much I want to, but I cannot just abandon my responsibilities." "Then let me come with you," Xavier said impulsively. "I can sell the stable. There must be work for someone like me in Santa Fe." Lily pulled back, looking stricken. "No, I could never ask you to give up your home, your business, everything you have built. That would not be fair." They stood there, holding each other, both of them grappling with the impossible situation they found themselves in. Finally, Lily spoke again. "Let me think. Let me figure out if there is a way to make this work. Can you give me that?" "I can give you anything you need," Xavier said. "But Lily, I need you to know something. I am falling in love with you. I know it is fast and probably foolish, but it is true. I have never felt this way about anyone." Tears gleamed in Lily's eyes. "I am falling in love with you too. That is why this is so hard." They held each other for a long time that night, neither wanting to let go, both knowing that time was running out. When Xavier finally went out to the stable to sleep, he lay awake for hours, staring at the rough wooden ceiling and praying for some kind of solution. The next morning brought a visitor that neither of them expected. A well-dressed woman in her 40s arrived in a sleigh pulled by two sturdy horses, making her way to Xavier's property with obvious purpose. Xavier was working with one of the horses when she arrived, and he wiped his hands on his trousers before going to greet her. "Can I help you, madam?" "I am looking for Miss Lily Barrett," the woman said in a crisp, educated voice. "I was told she was staying here while recovering from the stagecoach incident." "She is," Xavier said cautiously. "May I ask who you are?" "I am Constance Whitmore," the woman said. "I run the school in Santa Fe where Miss Barrett was to take a position." Xavier's heart sank. This was it then. This woman had come to take Lily away. "I will get her for you." Inside, he found Lily mending one of his shirts, a domestic scene that made his chest ache with longing. She looked up with a smile that faded when she saw his expression. "What is wrong?" "There is someone here to see you," Xavier said. "Mrs. Constance Whitmore from the school in Santa Fe." All the color drained from Lily's face. Oh no, she must have come all this way to find me." "You do not have to see her if you are not ready," Xavier said, but Lily was already standing, smoothing her skirt. "I do," she said. "I owe her that much at least." Xavier showed Mrs. Whitmore inside, then excused himself to give them privacy, though he did not go far. He could hear their voices through the door, though not well enough to make out words. The conversation seemed to go on forever. Finally, the door opened and Mrs. Whitmore emerged. She stopped when she saw Xavier, studying him with sharp, assessing eyes. "Mr. Lawson, Miss Barrett tells me you saved her life." "I helped her when she needed it," Xavier said carefully. "She also tells me that she has fallen in love with you and wishes to remain in Hillsboro rather than take up her post in Santa Fe." Xavier's eyes widened. He had not expected Lily to be so direct with this formidable woman. That is," Mrs. Whitmore held up a hand. "I am not here to judge, Mr. Lawson. I am here because Lily Barrett is one of the finest young educators I have ever had the pleasure to meet." Her letters of recommendation were impeccable, and her passion for teaching young women is evident in every word she writes. Losing her is a blow to my school. I am sorry, Xavier said, not knowing what else to say. However, Mrs. Whitmore continued, I am also a woman who believes in love and happiness. I have seen too many people sacrifice everything for duty and end up miserable. If Lily has found something worth staying for, then I will not stand in her way. Xavier felt hope flare in his chest. Thank you, madam. But, Mrs. Whitmore said firmly, I do have a proposition. Hillsboro has no school for girls, does it? No, madam. There is a schoolhouse, but it is just the one teacher for all the children, boys and girls together. Exactly, Mrs. Whitmore said. What if Miss Barrett were to start a school here? A proper academy for young ladies, like the one I run in Santa Fe. I would be willing to help fund the initial startup costs and provide curriculum guidance. Lily would have her teaching career, and you would have her here in Hillsboro. Xavier stared at her, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. You would do that? I believe in education, Mr. Lawson, and I believe in giving women opportunities. If Lily can bring quality education to girls in Hillsboro, that serves my purpose just as well as having her in Santa Fe. Better, perhaps, because she will be happy while doing it. Lily appeared in the doorway then, her eyes red but bright. Xavier, did you hear? Mrs. Whitmore is giving me a chance to stay and still teach. Xavier crossed to her in 2 long strides and pulled her into his arms, lifting her right off her feet. She laughed, that same warm sound he had heard on the first night, and he spun her around before setting her down and kissing her soundly, not caring that Mrs. Whitmore was watching. When they broke apart, Mrs. Whitmore was actually smiling. I take it you approve of the arrangement, Mr. Lawson. More than I can say, Xavier said. Thank you so much. Thank Lily, Mrs. Whitmore said. She is the one who will do all the hard work. Starting a school from nothing is no small task. I know, Lily said, but she was looking at Xavier, her eyes full of love and determination. But I think I have found something worth working hard for. Actually, I think I have found several things. Mrs. Whitmore stayed for dinner, and they talked long into the evening about plans for the school. She would return to Santa Fe, but would send books and materials within the month. Lily would need to find a building suitable for conversion to a schoolhouse, and she would need to recruit students. It would take time and effort, but as Xavier watched Lily's face light up while discussing curriculum and teaching methods, he knew she would succeed. After Mrs. Whitmore left the next morning, Xavier and Lily stood together in the doorway of his small house, watching the sleigh disappear down the snow-covered road. I can hardly believe it, Lily said softly. A few days ago, I thought I was going to die in a blizzard. Now I have a new home, a new school to build, and she looked up at Xavier shyly. And you have me for as long as you want me, Xavier said, which I hope is forever. Forever sounds perfect, Lily said. She turned in his arms, looping her hands behind his neck. Xavier Lawson, I know this has all happened incredibly fast. I know we should probably wait and court properly and do everything the right way, but I have to tell you something. When I was out there in that storm, freezing and lost, I prayed not just for shelter but for purpose. For something to live for. And then you opened that door, and it was like God answered both prayers at once. Xavier felt his throat tighten with emotion. The winter brought you to me, he said quietly. I thought you were a burden that night, another problem to deal with in the middle of a crisis. But Lily, you are not a burden. You are my blessing in disguise. You are everything I did not know I was missing. Lily stood on her toes and kissed him, and Xavier poured everything he felt into that kiss. All his loneliness, all his hope, All his love for this remarkable woman who had stumbled into his life during the worst storm New Mexico had seen in decades. The snow melted over the next 2 weeks, and as it did, Hillsboro came back to life. Lily and Xavier became a familiar sight around town, walking together as they searched for the right building for her school. They found it in an old storehouse on the edge of town that had been abandoned when the previous owner moved to California. It needed work, but it had good bones and plenty of space. Xavier threw himself into renovating the building, recruiting help from men in town who respected his work ethic and were curious about the pretty teacher who had captured his heart. Lily worked alongside them, painting walls and building bookshelves, her enthusiasm infectious. Mrs. Henderson and the other town ladies pitched in too, making curtains and cushions for the student chairs. One evening in late January, as they sat exhausted among paint cans and lumber, Lily leaned against Xavier's shoulder. "I never imagined my life would turn out like this," she said. "I had everything planned so carefully, and then one storm changed everything. Do you regret it?" Xavier asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. "Not for a second," Lily said firmly. She turned to look at him, her eyes serious. "Xavier, I want to marry you. Is that too forward? Should I have waited for you to ask me?" Xavier laughed, a sound of pure joy. "I have been trying to figure out the right way to ask you for weeks now. I do not have much to offer. This life, it is simple and humble." "It is honest and good," Lily corrected. "And you are the best man I have ever known. So yes or no, Xavier Lawson, will you marry me?" "Yes," Xavier said, cupping her paint-smudged face in his hands. "Yes, 1,000 times yes. You are the blessing I did not deserve but will thank God for every single day of my life." They married in March in a simple ceremony at the church with the whole town in attendance. Lily wore a dress that Mrs. Henderson and the other ladies had sewn for her, cream-colored with lace at the collar and cuffs. Xavier wore his best suit, the one he had inherited from his father and hardly ever had occasion to wear. Sheriff Harrison stood up as his best man, and Mrs. Whitmore traveled all the way from Santa Fe to stand up for Lily. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Matthews said, beaming at them. "Xavier, you may kiss your bride." Xavier did not need to be told twice. He pulled Lily into his arms and kissed her with all the love in his heart, and the church erupted in applause and cheers. When they finally broke apart, both of them were grinning like fools. The reception was held at Jack Crawford's saloon, which he had cleaned up and decorated for the occasion. There was fiddle music and dancing, and Xavier discovered that Lily was light on her feet and laughed when he stepped on her toes. They ate cake that the baker's wife had made and accepted congratulations from what felt like everyone in Hillsboro. As the evening wore on and the sun began to set, Xavier and Lily slipped away from the celebration and walked back to the house that was now truly theirs together. Xavier had spent the past week making improvements, adding touches he thought Lily would appreciate. A new rug for the bedroom, shelves for her books, a rocking chair by the fireplace that he had made himself. "Welcome home, Mrs. Lawson," Xavier said, sweeping her up into his arms and carrying her over the threshold. Lily laughed, her arms around his neck. "I am already home," she said. "I have been home since the night you opened that stable door and pulled me out of the storm." That night, they lay together in the bed that Xavier had once given up for her, now sharing it as husband and wife. Lily's head rested on his chest, and Xavier ran his fingers through her hair, still marveling that this was real, that she was his. "Tell me something," Lily said softly. "That first night when you found me on your doorstep, did you have any idea that this would happen?" Xavier thought about it. "No," he admitted. "I thought I was just helping someone in trouble. I never imagined that you would become my whole world." I was so scared, Lily confessed, not just of freezing to death but of what my life was going to be. I was going to Santa Fe to teach, which I wanted, but I was also running away from loneliness. My father had just died and I had no other family. I thought maybe surrounding myself with students would fill that emptiness. But then you found me, and suddenly I did not feel empty anymore. You will never be alone again, Xavier promised. I will be here beside you for the rest of our lives. And I beside you, Lily said. She propped herself up on one elbow to look down at him. We are going to have a good life, Xavier. I can feel it. We will build the school together, and we will fill this house with love and maybe, someday, with children. You want children? Xavier asked, his heart swelling at the thought. I do, Lily said. Do you? More than anything, Xavier said. I want sons and daughters who have your intelligence and your courage. I want to teach them to ride horses and watch you teach them to read. I want everything with you, Lily. She kissed him then, long and deep, and they showed each other without words just how much they meant to one another. Outside, the wind blew gently through the desert night, no longer the howling monster that had brought them together but a soft whisper of promise for the future. The school opened in April, and Lily had 12 students the first day. Girls ranging in age from 8 to 16, daughters of ranchers and shopkeepers and miners, all eager to learn. Xavier would stop by during the day sometimes, bringing Lily lunch and watching with pride as she taught her students history and literature and mathematics. She was a natural teacher, patient and encouraging, and her students adored her. Life fell into a comfortable rhythm. Xavier worked with his horses, his reputation growing as word spread about his skill as a trainer. Lily taught during the day and spent her evenings with Xavier, the two of them cooking dinner together and talking about their days. On Sundays, they went to church and had dinner with friends. It was a simple life, but it was full of joy. In August, Lily told Xavier she was expecting their first child. He was in the stable when she came to find him, and the look on her face told him everything before she said a word. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice shaking with emotion. "Doctor." Miller confirmed it this morning, Lily said, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "We are going to have a baby, Xavier." Xavier let out a whoop of joy and picked her up, spinning her carefully before setting her down and dropping to his knees in front of her. He pressed his face against her still flat stomach and felt tears prick his own eyes. "I love you," he whispered to the tiny life growing inside her. "I love you so much already." Lily ran her fingers through his hair, her own tears falling freely now. "Our child is going to be so loved," she said. "So wanted, so blessed." Xavier stood and pulled her into his arms. "Just like their mother," he said. "My blessing in disguise." The pregnancy was not easy. Lily suffered from sickness in the early months and had to reduce her teaching hours. Xavier worried constantly, hovering over her until she gently but firmly told him that she was pregnant, not made of glass. But he could not help it. The thought of anything happening to her terrified him. As her belly grew, so did his wonder. He would lie with his hand on her stomach at night, feeling their child move and kick. Lily would laugh at his amazement, but she understood it. This new life was a miracle to both of them, proof of the love they shared. In February of 1881, exactly 1 year and 2 months after the blizzard that had brought them together, Lily went into labor. It was a long, difficult birth that tested both of them. Xavier stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand and whispering encouragement even as he silently prayed for both of them to come through safely. Finally, as dawn broke over Hillsboro, their son was born. "Doctor." Miller placed the squalling infant in Xavier's arms, and he looked down at the tiny red face with absolute awe. "He is perfect," Xavier breathed. "Let me see him," Lily said weakly from the bed, and Xavier carefully placed their son in her arms. She looked down at the baby with such love that Xavier felt his heart might burst. "What should we name him?" Xavier asked. Lily was quiet for a moment, studying their son's face. "Samuel," she said finally. "Samuel Lawson, it means God has heard." "It is perfect," Xavier said. "Hello, Samuel." "Welcome to the world, son." Little Samuel proved to be a healthy, happy baby who seemed to inherit the best qualities of both his parents. He had Xavier's dark hair and Lily's honey-colored eyes, and he smiled early and often. Xavier discovered depths of love he had not known existed, watching his son grow and change every day. Lily returned to teaching part-time when Samuel was 3 months old, bringing him to the school with her. Her students were enchanted with the baby, and the older girls especially loved helping care for him. It created a warm, family atmosphere that everyone appreciated. As Samuel grew into a toddler, then a young boy, Xavier and Lily's life continued to blossom. They had 2 more children over the next 5 years. A daughter they named Rose, who had Lily's fierce intelligence and Xavier's quiet strength, and another son they called Thomas, who was wild and adventurous from the moment he could walk. The stable grew too. Xavier took on a partner, a young man named Peter Jameson, who had been working as a ranch hand and showed real talent with horses. This allowed Xavier more flexibility to help Lily with the children and the school, which had grown to 25 students and required a second teacher. They hired a young woman named Alice Keller, fresh from a teaching college back east, and she proved to be as dedicated and capable as Lily herself. The house also grew, with Xavier building additions as the family expanded. What had been a modest dwelling became a proper family home, with bedrooms for the children and a large kitchen where they all gathered for meals. Lily's dream of filling the house with love had certainly come true. On a cold December evening in 1886, 7 years after the blizzard that had changed their lives, Xavier and Lily sat on their front porch watching their children play in the yard. Samuel, now 5, was showing his younger siblings how to stack stones, his little teacher's heart already evident. Rose and Thomas were arguing about something with the passionate intensity only small children could muster. "Can you believe it has been 7 years?" Lily asked, leaning her head on Xavier's shoulder. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday," Xavier said. "I can still remember exactly what you looked like when you collapsed on my doorstep. Blue lips, ice in your hair, barely alive. And you saved me," Lily said softly, "in more ways than one." "We saved each other," Xavier corrected. "I was half alive before you came, Lily. I was going through the motions, working and sleeping and existing, but not really living. You woke me up. You gave me a reason to look forward to tomorrow." Lily lifted her head to look at him. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if the storm had not come? If I had made it to Santa Fe as planned?" "I try not to," Xavier admitted. "Because the thought of never meeting you, never having this life with you and our children, it is too painful to contemplate." "I used to think everything had to be planned," Lily said. "I had my whole life mapped out, every step calculated, but the best things that ever happened to me were the things I never planned. The storm, meeting you, staying in Hillsboro, our children. All of it came from chaos and uncertainty, but it led to happiness I never imagined possible." "The winter brought you as a burden," Xavier said, repeating words he had spoken years ago. "That is what I thought that first night, just for a moment. Another problem, another responsibility." "But Lily, you are not a burden. You never were. You are my blessing in disguise. You are everything good in my life." Lily's eyes filled with tears, as they always did when he said things like this. "And you are mine," she said. "My unexpected blessing, my answered prayer." They sat together as the sun set. painting the New Mexico sky in shades of orange and pink. Samuel called to them, wanting to show them his stone tower, and they went to admire his handiwork, praising his effort and patience. Rose demanded to be lifted up so she could see better, and Thomas wanted a horsey ride on Xavier's back. Later, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Xavier and Lily lay together in their room, the same room where Xavier had once let a frozen stranger rest while he slept in a chair. So much had changed, yet the core of who they were and what they meant to each other remained constant. "I love you," Lily whispered in the darkness. "I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "And I love you," Xavier replied. "Thank you for staying. Thank you for choosing this life with me." "It was the easiest choice I ever made," Lily said, "because it did not feel like a choice. It felt like coming home." The years continued to roll forward, bringing both joy and challenge. The school thrived, eventually moving to an even larger building and employing 4 teachers. Lily became known throughout the territory as an educator of distinction, with families sending their daughters to study under her guidance from as far away as Albuquerque and El Paso. Xavier's stable became one of the most respected in the region. The horses he trained were sought after by ranchers and the cavalry alike. He developed a reputation for being able to work with even the most difficult animals, bringing out their potential through patience and understanding rather than force. Their children grew strong and capable. Samuel inherited his mother's love of learning and became a schoolteacher himself, taking over much of the day-to-day operations of the academy as Lily transitioned into more of an administrative role. Rose surprised everyone by developing a passion for medicine, apprenticing with Dr. Miller and eventually going back east to attend medical school, one of the few women to do so at that time. Thomas, true to his wild nature, became a scout and wilderness guide, leading expeditions through the territories and always coming home with incredible stories. Xavier and Lily watched their children's accomplishments with pride, but their greatest joy remained each other. Even after decades of marriage, Xavier would still sometimes look at Lily across the dinner table or catch sight of her in the garden and feel that same flutter in his chest that he had felt the first time he truly saw her, sitting in his chair wrapped in blankets with firelight dancing in her honey-colored eyes. As they grew older, they made a habit of walking together every evening, regardless of the weather. They would stroll through Hillsboro, watching the town that had become so much their home continue to grow and change. They would visit the church where they had married, the school that Lily had built from nothing, the stable where their life together had truly begun. On one such walk in December of 1905, 26 years after the blizzard, they found themselves standing outside Xavier's stable in the early evening. Snow was beginning to fall, light and gentle, nothing like the monster storm that had brought them together but enough to dust the world in white. "You remember?" Lily asked, though she knew he did. They had come here on this date every year, recreating their first meeting. "I remember everything," Xavier said. His hair was gray now, and his face was lined with age, but his eyes were still as warm and kind as they had been when he was 30. "I remember the sound of your knock on the door. I remember how light you felt in my arms, like you might blow away if I did not hold tight enough. I remember thinking that I did not want you to leave, even before I knew your name." Lily leaned against him, fitting perfectly into his side as she always had. "I remember thinking you were the answer to my prayers," she said. "I remember your hands, so gentle and careful. I remember your voice, how it made me feel safe even when I was terrified. I remember falling in love with you a little bit more with every passing hour." "Best thing that ever happened to me was opening that door," Xavier said. Best thing that ever happened to me was being behind it, Lily replied. They stood there together as the snow continued to fall. Two people who had found each other in the midst of a storm and built a life more beautiful than either had dared to dream. Their children were grown and making their own ways in the world, but they came home often, bringing grandchildren who filled the house with laughter and chaos. The school continued to educate young women, giving them opportunities Lily had fought for her entire career. The stable continued to produce the finest horses in the territory, testament to Xavier's skill and dedication. But none of that mattered as much as this moment, standing in the gently falling snow with the person who had become their everything. The winter had brought Lily to Xavier as a burden, or so he had briefly thought. But she had never been a burden. From that very first moment, from that very first breath when he had lifted her into his arms and carried her to safety, she had been his blessing in disguise. And every day since had only confirmed what his heart had known from the beginning. They were meant to find each other. They were meant to love each other. They were meant to build this life together. The storm had been fierce and dangerous, but it had also been the hand of fate, pushing them together when they both needed it most. Lily had needed saving from the cold, yes, but Xavier had needed saving too. From loneliness, from purposelessness, from a life half-lived. And save each other they had in the best possible way. Not through grand gestures or dramatic sacrifices, but through everyday love, through showing up for each other again and again, through building something lasting and true. As the snow began to fall harder, Xavier took Lily's hand. "Let us go inside," he said. "I will make you tea just like that first night." "Perfect," Lily said, smiling up at him with all the love in her heart. They walked into the house together, shaking snow from their coats and stamping their feet on the mat. The fire was already burning in the hearth, and the house was warm and welcoming. Xavier hung up their coats while Lily settled into the rocking chair he had made for her all those years ago. He prepared the tea with the same herbs he had used that first night, then brought it to her along with a blanket. "You do not need to fuss over me," Lily said, but she was smiling. "I know," Xavier said, "but I like taking care of you. It is one of my greatest pleasures." He sat in his own chair beside hers, and they rocked gently, sipping their tea and watching the fire crackle. Outside, the wind picked up slightly, but it was nothing like that long-ago storm. Inside, they were warm and safe and together. "Thank you," Lily said suddenly. "For what?" Xavier asked. "For everything," Lily said. "For opening the door that night, for letting me stay, for falling in love with me, for building this life with me, for being exactly who you are." Xavier reached over and took her hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long practice. "I should be thanking you," he said. "You are the one who transformed my life. You are the one who made all of this possible." "We did it together," Lily said firmly. "That is the whole point. Neither of us could have had this life alone. We needed each other." "We did," Xavier agreed. "We do. We always will." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just being together as they had been for nearly 3 decades. Eventually, they moved to the bedroom, helping each other prepare for sleep with the same gentle care they had always shown. Xavier held Lily close as they settled into bed, her head on his chest just as it had been on their wedding night. "I love you, Xavier Lawson," Lily whispered. "Now and always." "I love you, Lily Lawson," Xavier replied. "My blessing, my miracle, my everything." Outside, the snow continued to fall softly through the New Mexico night, a gentle reminder of the storm that had brought them together and the enduring love that had grown from it. Inside, two souls who had found each other against all odds drifted off to sleep, grateful for every moment they had shared and every moment still to come. The winter had brought her as a burden, but Xavier had lifted her up and discovered the truth that would define the rest of his life. She was not a burden at all. She was his blessing in disguise, and he would spend the rest of his days thanking whatever force had sent that storm, had guided her frozen footsteps to his door, had given him the incomparable gift of her love. And as they slept peacefully in each other's arms, the snow outside gradually stopped, the clouds parted, and the stars came out to shine over Hillsboro, New Mexico, blessing the home where two people had found everything they never knew they needed in the midst of an impossible storm.